and I'd like to give you another video and another peek into the progress on the 30-day truck build. So we're still waiting on the gas tank to get back from the radiator shop. It's supposed to be another couple days, so it's kind of about a week behind, and that's what happens. That's my fault. I should have sent it in way earlier. I should have looked at that piece earlier, but I didn't, and it's fine. So it's at the radiator shop, and they'll make it nice and clean inside, and we'll be all set probably early next week or sometime next week if I can get down there to get it, kind of depending on the week. So that's the radiator. Other things that I have done since the last video is I've played with the electrical. I sorted out getting the starter button to work, getting power to the coil. You know, the wiring harness in that truck was your typical harness that is on a vehicle that's been abandoned in a junkyard or, you know, in a field, and that is lots of wires are cut. Some things have been modified. The weather gets to them and ages them. Some are usable, some aren't. So you have to kind of plan for doing a little auto electric archaeology to try to determine what's been modified and what's broken and what's missing and things like that. So did a little bit of that, and we had some of all of the above. We had some wires that were broken that we sorted out, that I found out, and hooked back up. It also, this truck did not have this truck had an ignition switch in it, but it was an aftermarket ignition switch that you would have bought at the parts house, you know, 40 years ago, and pretty generic. So no way to tell, no real easy way to tell what wires are what on it when you don't have any power to the truck, so I didn't worry about it. Once I got the ignition switch in it, which the ignition switch that's in the truck is out of a probably supposedly a 53 Mercury. So it is comparable. It's a push button. It has just a little different bezel, but it is really close to exactly what we needed. And so the hole had been modified for the aftermarket switch, so there wasn't any concern about, you know, about fitment. That piece is in, it works. We found the hot wire, we got the wire to the coil, determined which one that was, and we also, it's like a little spider hanging from the ceiling. Fix that. And we also made sure the push button worked. So good things are happening along that front. I don't know if any of the gauges, like the lights in the gauges, work. I didn't mess with that. It isn't necessary. It isn't necessary for the success of this series to make every piece of electrical work. So we have the key pieces working. So that's kind of it. So my hope was this video would be putting the gas tank in. It's not going to be putting the gas tank in. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to video pulling the carb off of this truck. So if you look back at the very early videos of when I drug this home, I did a first start on it, and it ran, and the motor sounded really good, but the carburetor didn't respond like you would expect it to, like you would need it to. So I knew kind of at that point that I would have to pull the carburetor off and at least clean it out and see if there were the jets had dirt and varnish in them. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to set you up. We're going to pull the carburetor off. We're not going to rebuild it. We're just going to see. Well, I say we're not going to rebuild it. If I can't get it apart without destroying everything, then we'll rebuild it. But if I can get it apart far enough to clean it up and make it so that we can get it to run around the block, then that's what I'll do. So we'll kind of play it by ear. As soon as I say I'm not going to rebuild it, that almost guarantees the rebuild process. So I'll just err on the side of we'll do a little discovery mission on the carburetor. We know it runs on it, so it's at least a good buildable carburetor. At this point it feels like it. So next step is we'll pull it off, and I'll just kind of take you through what I do with one of these old ancient carburetors that's been sitting out and is probably in need of some love. Okay, here's the carburetor tune-up. This truck, the way it came, it has this really interesting air cleaner on it, and it is, I haven't really done a lot of work to look at it. It's a Purelator. The interesting thing is on the bottom, they actually modified the bottom of it so that it will fit this lower base from this carburetor on it. So this truck would have had an oil bath. They converted this to an element style. So that's kind of a neat solution. So we're going to keep that. We'll put a new element in it. But I just thought I would share that. That's not a very common thing. And when you see it done, you certainly don't see it done that nice. So it's a little hard to get to the screw, but you know, you don't really have to get to it very often. So that's that piece. It never fails. The first thing you need is the tool you didn't bring. So pretty far for the course. Well, I didn't want to pop off real easy, so I went and got a tubing wrench. You don't want to jack that up now. Wow, I didn't bring roots either. Okay. Got this gigantic one here. My personal pet peeve. Not using the right tool for the job. I am absolutely the villain of that. Okay, can't do it. If I were broke down on the side of the road, that would be fine. But when I'm 20 steps from my toolbox, I just gotta go to the toolbox. So on these old vehicles like this, especially old Fords, you have a lot more hardline versus rubber line, like you would on the 60s. Well, even some of the 60s Ford, they still used a hard line for vacuum advance and things like that. So a few more lines to take off. Here's the choke cable we installed that was working. Not super complicated to get off, that's for sure. As you can imagine, I don't think the carburetor's been off for a while. It has been off though, looks like. Got a little holly on it. Lots of these carburetors have a glass float bolt. I'm not sure if that came, that may have been the original on it, where this one has a non-glass, has a brass. So not sure if that's indicative that it's been replaced, but it'd be cool if it had a glass on it. I think they're kind of slick. I could see all the crap floating around in it. So this stud and nut are super varnished up or rusted up, and usually the carburetor nuts spin off pretty fast and pretty easy. But in this situation, not so much. They're also a little bigger than you know, like if you're dealing with a 2-barrel or a 4-barrel, they're usually 5/16. These are actually 3/8 bolts that hold this down, so a little bit bigger, which probably isn't necessarily great from a down the road perspective, because when people work on them and they have bigger bolts, they tend to torque it down a lot harder, and you know, carburetors are not super durable, and got a couple lock washers on it, so that's I'm not positive, but there may have been a spacer in between, a fiber spacer, the gasket that was in between there. I haven't messed with enough of these, but the studs are awfully long for this application. So, like I said before, you're always doing archaeology. So you're trying to figure out what's missing, what somebody's done to it. Do you need to change it? Do you need to go back? Do you need to do some research? So I have got a couple books that I will reference that can help me. The other piece is always take the washers and all that hardware off of the studs before you pull the carburetor. A lot of people will pick the carburetor up with the washers on it, and that's never an awesome solution, because they'll fall down the intake. Okay. All right, there's the carburetor. Let's take a look inside. All right. This carburetor's been apart before, and here's the tell. If you get it, try to get it so you can focus. Right here, you can see that this flange is got a big bow in it, and the bolt, the screw or the bolt that tightens the bowl on has pulled those all the way together. That's because somebody has over tightened this bowl, you know, way tighter than it needs to. So we'll be lucky if we can get that to seal up when we fix it, especially without a new gasket. So first indicator that we could very well be getting a kit for this. What we're going to do is we're going to pull the bowl off. It'd be easy just to say screw it and let's put a kit in it, but I mean, quite honestly, we're almost there on making this thing run, and I really just want to get it across the finish line. So that being said, the gasket doesn't feel like it's just gonna pop right off. It's making that ripping, tearing sound. That sound you hate when you're trying to save something. It looks like It's had multiple gaskets put together. Probably, whoa, it's got some chunks in it. Oh. Like I said, multiple gaskets put together. So lots of nastiness inside. So that usually gets inside the jets and causes some problems. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it did this time. Pull that out and that out. Pull the float out, which looks fine. It's an interesting animal. It's got this. It's got a needle and seat. Looks like the needle just barely clears. See if we can see the magic in getting this out. So I have never built one of these little single barrel Hollies, so you and I we're both learning at the same time. They don't look terribly complex. Oh, this whole assembly comes out. That's how that works. Gotcha. Okay, so let's pull that off. You guys that are watching that have done these are going, oh my god, you're not doing it right. I hear you. You should have spoke up. Okay, that seats into there, and this has a bunch of dirt in it. Whew. Bunch of dirt in it, and a interesting. I'm going to try to show you just because I don't know how many of you guys have seen this before, but it has an interesting screw in there that looks like a jet that actually holds this boss in. And the reason I want to get it out is it's pretty dirty up in there. So I think it's pretty dirty up inside that area. So I think my chances are going to be a lot better of having this carburetor function if I can get it out. So that came out really easily. My guess is they don't always come out that easily on this particular model. A little washer came down. So pay attention to all the moving pieces that come out. There's the needle. Okay, so this piece, I'm not going to run, if I end up putting it in the carburetor cleaner, I'm not going to run those pieces through. Here's that little jet thing. You can see, I hope you can see, it looks like it's focused. You can see how corroded and nasty it was. Doesn't let much fuel in, that's for sure. Little motors really don't require all that much fuel. Boy, it is a crap deal. Alright. Well, these jets are certainly crappy. So let's get those out. And we'll see if we can. It's not actually a jet, that's just one of the screws that holds this metering plate. It looked like it had a hole in it. Just had a chunk of dirt, I guess. It's got a metering plate in it similar to like a Holly would have. Well, no surprise, it is a Holly. But like a 600 or something of that nature would have. Single jet. It's open, so that's probably why it was running. So it looks like the accelerator pump is inside this area. Boy, that's no good. I'm pretty confident the accelerator pump didn't work. So I'm pulling this apart because I'm not exactly sure how that goes in there, but I want to pull this metering plate out because that's where the accelerator pump is hiding behind, and I want to see if it's clean and gonna come back. So some of these carburetors, they come back a little easier when they've been like this, and some of them don't. So I don't know about, I don't have a ton of optimism on this. Got a couple things going against this. One, I don't have even a parts kit for gaskets. And two, that flange for the bolt is really bent. It's had quite a bit of water in it, so the water really does a number on carburetors. I feel like I'm rambling to you, so. Woo. There you go, that was gross. There's the power valve. So yeah, we need to clean these guys out. That looks usable, but it's definitely gross. This has an interesting looking gasket in there. See how you got the accelerator pump here, and then it's got this whole other gasket built into it for that, for this body to seal. So it's a pretty kind of a complex little animal. This is kind of the point where you decide, what am I doing? Am I gonna try to pull it apart and probably rip that gasket? Or do I clean it up the best I can? And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to clean it up the best I can right now and put it back together and see if it'll work. Knowing that if I go much farther, I'm gonna have to put a kit in it. So, let me do some cleanup. Alright, so what we did was we put this in the solvent tank, cleaned it up, and it cleaned up pretty easily from the water that was in there, and got all the residue out, cleaned all the passages out with air, and we're gonna put it back together. And the other thing I did was, because these flanges were so distorted, I actually put a C-clamp. Around that and compressed it back some. I didn't take it all the way back to where it would have been brand new, because it probably would have broken if I would have tried. But I pulled that one back, I pulled these two back, and I pulled this one back. So it basically makes it flatter. It doesn't make it perfectly flat, it just makes it flatter. Alright, I went ahead and cleaned up the other pieces and got all the gunk out of them for the most part. And we'll just take a real quick look at it, just make sure. It's not the same as if you would have done it in a carburetor cleaner, but the solvent tank does a nice job of neutralizing kind of the other foreign buildup, so like moisture buildup, and kind of looks like calcium residue in there. So then we'll drop this guy in. Okay. Let's see. The cool thing is I opened my solvent tank and found the screwdriver that I had not been able to locate, so that was kind of cool. Okay, so it looks like we have two long ones. We'll go here. Get those started. I'm going to use that screwdriver just because it's handy. And I will be the first to tell you, the better way to have done this would have been to have a carburetor kit. And you know, if it doesn't work the way we want it to, that's exactly what we'll do. Put a carburetor kit in. Although the carburetor kit probably wouldn't have addressed most of what maladies we had here. Yeah, let's see. Could we be missing one screw? That's kind of interesting. This is how it usually works. Somehow. One of the most important little screws putting this together. Okay, let me find that little screw and I'll bring you right back. Okay, we're back at it. Found a screw and we're rolling. So, if you're playing with old cars and you mess with lots of old junk and you bring it back to life, make sure and take a little box, a container, something, and put all those little trinkety pieces that come from projects you've worked on that don't get used. Put them in there. The little screws, the little springs, the little one-off balls for linkage, and that kind of stuff. It will save you over and over and over again. Just a tip for the wise. All right, let's put this piece back together. Clean it as we go. Not necessarily the best way, but it is the way we're doing it. Okay, so slide that in there. That's going to kind of hold it. That thrust washer or sealing ring on it. That kind of goes in there, an ingenious little way of doing it. It has a little shelf that piece sits on so that it goes in the right place. Okay, that part's on. So then, really no reason we can't put this guy in. All right, jet coming right up. Right. Well, it looks pretty beat up and mangled and whatnot, so that's interesting. Not sure how a float would get like that, but it certainly is. Leave it set right where it was. It looks like it's about right. This looks like it ought to be a treat. None of these really line up anymore. We actually have to do some more tweaking on this to get this to work. Oh. It's only made it go on one way. Oh, look at that. Gotta be smarter than the carburetor. Alright. Oh, good things are happening now. And you don't try to put it on upside down. Just going to kind of pull these snug, and you can kind of see now that we have a little bit of gap here. So not as much on the top because I couldn't do much with the top. A little bit there and a little bit there. So what that does, it gives us a little bit of room to tighten it up once it's on the car and we try it to see if it's going to work. And other than that, we kind of have to just cross our fingers. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go put it on the truck. We've already seen me pull it off, so you don't really need to see that. And then I think we'll put a little gas in it and see if it'll run. Okay, so the carburetor's on. It's cleaned up. What we're going to do now, I'm not sure if you can see me or not, but it doesn't matter. What we're going to do now is we're going to fill a bowl full of gas, see if that leaks, and then we'll see if it'll start. Remember, this isn't really a first start. We did that when we first got the truck, so I know the truck runs, but it didn't run very well with that carburetor. So now that it's cleaned out, got a 50-50 chance it'll run better and idle, and electrical system will work with it and it'll start. And if it does, then we are a fuel tank and a brake bleed away from going around the block. So let's fill up the float bowl. Oh, we're not even close to not leaking. Oh, that screw wasn't tight at all. Huh. Kind of interesting. Right nose up on the bench, but I guess they just weren't quite where they need to be. All right, let's try it again. Failure 1. Well, that's better. No gas pouring out of the float bowl. Okay, this came out the vent. So now what we'll do is we will see the accelerator pump does not look like it's going to come back alive. That's too bad. So what we'll do is ultimately we'll get a kit for this. Take it all the way apart. See if we can get that accelerator pump to come back to life. It's a diaphragm style, so it's not like it's going to get better after it has gas in it. That's not too bad. Got to put the choke cable on. Making some gurgling sounds. Okay, let's fill it up one more time, and I'll just check the oil pressure real quick, and then we'll call it good. Well, I'm going to call that success. It's going to need a little choke probably because it doesn't have an accelerator pump, but we'll use the choke. I think we can get around the block, and once it's warmed up, it should be fine to do what we're doing. I think that is a win. I'm Clay for Chop Shop Motors, and we'll see you on the next project.